Hello, it's Miss Coletta here to discuss how to graph a linear equation. There are two ways that we will look at for graphing linear equations. The first is graphing with a slope and a y-intercept. The second is graphing with the y equals equation. So when we look at example 1 here, we know that the slope of our graph should be 2 when we're done, and the y-intercept should be -1. Do you know what piece of information we should start with? When graphing a linear equation, we always start with the y-intercept because that tells us a very specific point on the graph. The y-intercept, remember, is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So when we see here that our y-intercept is -1, that tells me to go to my y-axis and to go to -1 on the y-axis. So if I start at the origin, -1 means I go down 1. And then I can put a point right there on my graph. Now, once we've used up the y-intercept, we have to do something with the slope. Well, remember that the slope is rise over run. So we have 2 equals rise over run. And we're trying to figure out how much to go up or down and how much to go over using that slope of 2. Well, the problem here is that we have a fraction on the right-hand side, rise over run, but on the left-hand side I just have the number 2. Can you think of a way to create a fraction with that so that we have a rise and a run, but we haven't actually changed the value of 2? I can put a 1 in the denominator, and that will not change the value of 2. So anytime you have a slope that's a whole number like 2, if you just put it over 1, that will work for you for the rise and the run. It won't change the number of the slope. So then, this slope tells me how to travel from the point I already plotted from the y-intercept. So if I'm looking at my y-intercept here, I know that I will rise 2, and since that's a positive 2, that means I'm going to move up 2 from that point, and then I will run 1. So I'll move over 1. So my next point will be right here. And I'll go ahead and plot that point. Notice that I traveled from the y-intercept to get to my next point. So I went up 2 and over 1. Okay? Now once I've plotted my 2 points, all I need to do is connect them with a line because it only takes 2 points to plot a line. So I'll connect them here with my line, and I'm done that example. The only other thing that I want to do when I'm done that is to write my y equals equation for this line because that will come in handy in certain scenarios. So I'll write y equals, and then I just need to think about how to use the slope and the y-intercept to write my y equals equation. Well, do you remember if the slope is the number that goes with the x term or by itself in a y equals equation? That's right, it goes with the x term. So this 2 has the x next to it. And then the y-intercept is the number that's by itself. So in this case, because it's a -1, we will put -1. If the y-intercept was a +1, I would put +1. And that's it. We're done example 1. So let's take a look at example 2 and see if we can handle that. Oops. In example 2, our slope is -3 over 4 and our y-intercept is 2. So again, what do we plot first? That's right, the y-intercept. So the y-intercept of 2 means I go on the y-axis up 2 from the origin. And I'll plot my point. Then, from my y-intercept, I will travel based on the slope. Now notice that this slope is already a fraction. So I can write rise over run, but I don't have to put anything over 1 to make a fraction. I already have a fraction here. So, my rise says to rise -3. Now if we have a negative there, do you remember what that means? That means I travel down. So starting from my y-intercept, I go down 3. 1, 2, and then 3. And then my run is a +4. So if it's positive, we run to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where my next dot will go. Then all I need to do is connect my 2 dots with a line. And I'm done. The last thing I want to do on this example is just write my y equals equation. So I'll go down here and write a y equals. So we have y equals, and then remember the slope is the number that goes with the x, so I put my slope, -3/4, and I put my x next to it. The y-intercept goes by itself, so if it's a +2, I show that by writing +2. And we're done those 2 examples. Now we'll take a look at graphing with the y equals equation. You're going to see that this is very, very similar to the examples we just did. So if you look at example 1, you'll notice that instead of getting the slope and the y-intercept, you get the actual equation. Well, we can pick the slope and the y-intercept out of an equation. I'm going to write this down at the bottom just so that I have room. But in example 1, what's the slope of my equation? Remember that slope is the number with the x. So the number in front of my x in this problem is -2/3. Remember when we write the slope that we never write the x with it, we just write the number itself. So -2/3. And then my y-intercept, well, that's the number by itself, the only number I haven't used yet, and since it's a +3 at the end of the equation, the y-intercept is a +3. So then, once we've identified the slope and the y-intercept, we're just going back to what we just did and plotting our graph the same exact way. I start with my y-intercept, and that's up 3 from the origin, and then I will travel based on my slope. So starting at this point, I have to write rise over run so that I know how to move, but we'll travel from that point. So again, if my rise is a negative number, in this case -2, I'll move down 2. 1, 2. And then my run means to move to the right. 1, 2, 3. And that's where my second point will go. Once I have my 2 points, I simply connect them with a line, and I'm done. And I don't have to write the y equals equation because we already had it when we started. On to example 2 then. Let's first identify the slope and the y-intercept. In this example, the slope, the number with x, is 4. And what do you think the y-intercept is? In this case, it's -5. Since we have 4x and then we subtract 5, that tells us the y-intercept is negative because of the subtraction. So we remember, always look to the left of a number to see what sign goes with it. So in this case, our y-intercept is -5. Then we're ready to plot. Remember, when we plot, we first start with the y-intercept. So a y-intercept of -5 tells me to start at the origin and go down 5 to plot my point. So I'll start all the way down here at the bottom of the y-axis. And then my slope tells me how to travel. If I don't have a fraction, do you remember what I do? Well, I would have rise over run here, but I don't have anything on the bottom, so we simply put our number over 1. So this tells me to travel up 4 and then over 1. So starting from this point, we're going to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. So that's where my point will land me. Right here. Then, once we have that, we simply connect our dots. And once we've done that, we're finished this example as well. I hope this helped you learn how to graph a linear equation. Thank you for joining me.